Hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Okay, so I'm in the brassica cages, the purple sprouting broccoli and the normal broccoli. As you can see, I've started to pull it out. Now this is not going to waste. Basically what I'm going to do with this is basically take off all the little bits and we'll eat those, and then all of the leaves and stalks and everything, they'll go into the chickens, and then basically the chickens will be eating all of those. Now the stalks, basically what I'll do is as soon as the chickens have had what they want off there, I won't be composting them, I'll be putting them straight into the sort of the bin, the composting bin for the council to take away, because just in case I have got any club roots or anything, even though I've seen no evidence of it, I always think for you know, brassica plants, you'd always better off you know, sort of recycle them rather than using them, because I think you know, what you want to do is sort of absolutely minimise the risk of getting club root, because if you have got it, you know, it's going to take you years to get rid of it. So what I'm going to do is just take off the remaining little bits of broccoli that we can eat, and then the rest of it's going to go to the chickens. Okay, so now I've fetched all of the old plants out up to sort of halfway. Reason being, I don't want to sort of my chickens to have overdose on the vegetables. So what I'll do is I'll just plant out for the first half, and then what I can do is give them the rest in the week. And I'll just finish off that top bit in exactly the same way. But I just wanted to show you what I've done basically is taken out all of the brassicas, making sure all of the root comes out with it. Fetched out all the weeds, and I've basically just trod all the ground down. Unfortunately the mole's been in here, so what I've done is just loosened up the ground a little bit with the fork, and I've sort of trod it all back down, so the ground's reasonably firm now. So what I'll do now is just plant the new brassicas in. Now, if you are going to plant a second lot of brassicas, what you most certainly need to do, obviously in the organic way, is most certainly any damaged leaves that have come off the first lot of brassicas that you fetched out, you need to remove that. So what I would suggest is you remove any bits of the old plants, because what you don't want to do is any disease or anything that the first plants could have possibly had. You want to remove all trace of that basically when you put the first ones in. So I'm just putting these first two in. I realise you can't see them on the camera, and I'll just put the first one in that you can see. So I'm planting these reasonably close together in exactly the same way as I did the first lot earlier on in the year. As I say, the ground's reasonably firm. I'm just sort of breaking up the ground, making sure that the roots can get in. But there's the plants. They're kind of looking like that, and these are most certainly ready to go out. What you don't want to do is let the plant get any kind of bigger than that. That's about 9 inches tall, and there are the roots. So you can see it's beginning. It's not pot bound, but it most certainly would be in the next couple of weeks. So I'm just putting them in there, and what you can do, if you're not quite as heavy as me, I just kind of push them down like that and put my hands on the side of the plant. But what you can do is just heel the plant in, so basically just put your foot either side of the plant like that, just to make sure that the ground is firm, if you're slightly lighter than me. So I'm just putting the ones in. So basically what I'm going to do is sort of do effectively 3 rows. So there'll be a row at the back, a row in the middle, and a row towards the edge where I'm walking. And so the distance between each of the plants is around sort of 14 inches. And I find that that's, as I've explained in earlier videos, I find that that works quite well for me, because what you want to do is, as these plants grow, what you want to do is make sure that they're supported. And the things with a sort of normal broccoli and purple sprouting broccoli is what it can do is it can get a little bit top heavy, because the roots don't tend to be that you know, sort of supportive, to be honest with you. And that's one of the main reasons why you want to keep the ground reasonably firm. so that it does get a good hold in the ground. So this mole that I've got at the minute really isn't doing me any favours, as far as the brassicas are concerned anyway. So that's the first 6 plants in, and what I'll do is continue down the row and I'll show you when I've got it finished. Okay, so there are the new broccoli plants in. Now what I'm going to do is just give them a reasonably good water. I know we promised some rain tomorrow, but this ground is a little bit dry, even though they were watered in the week, the old plant at least. But I'm just putting just a bit of water. I'll probably put, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 watering cans on these ones that I've got in so far. And as I say, what I'll do is as soon as the chickens have ate all that top bit there, I'll be putting the remainder of the brassicas in. So basically they're the new ones in. Obviously, what I did do on a couple of them, this one here and the one on the end there, I actually damaged one of the leaves when I was getting it out of the greenhouse and putting it in the wheelbarrow to bring it down. If you do that, remove the leaf, because if the leaf gets diseased, you know, it will potentially carry the disease onto the entire plant, if not the plants sort of near it. So it's always best with brassicas that if you have got a damaged leaf, just pull it off and put it in your compost, and you know, to prevent any sort of fungus. So what I'll do, I'll just finish off watering them, and then I'll, you know, as I say, I'll do the rest of them in the week. Okay, so I just want to do some of the questions that have come over in the last week or so. The first one comes from Tina at Allotment Upcycling, and she was talking about the garlic spray. And basically, she was saying, could you not put the garlic, the crushed garlic, into like a muslin cloth and suspend it in the water? I have tried this in the past. To be honest with you, the best way that I've found to do it, and I've tried it various different ways, is to put the garlic crushed into a jam jar of water, you know, just a normal sort of Dolmio sized jam jar, something like that. Give it a really good shake, and then leave it for about half an hour, and just give it a shake every sort of, I don't know, every so often. Give it 3 or 4 different, you know, sort of shakes, and then leave it for 10 minutes, then shake it, leave it, and then shake it, and, you know what I'm saying. And then as soon as you've done that, the spray that I had before, I got like a filter on it, so you didn't need to do this part. But with this one, what I had to do last week when I was spraying was basically just pour it through a piece of cloth just to sieve it, you know, just to sieve it out. What I have found is if you do have it in a like a muslin cloth, what you can find is the diffusion of the oil through the cloth isn't as good. What you need to do is get the garlic actually in the water and give it a good shake. Then all the oil comes out, and then basically, and then just sort of sieve it through the muslin cloth. And I find that the concentration, if you like, of the garlic, or the strength of it, is much better if you do that rather than, you know, just putting it in a like a tea bag, effectively, I suppose. I find that you get a lot more of the sort of the garlic going into the water, and you know, it's basically a stronger solution for doing that. But you can do that, but I've always found that if you put the garlic straight into the water, shake it, and then filter it out later, then it does tend to you know, sort of basically make a stronger solution. The next one comes from Nigel, Muddy Boots, over in Wolverhampton, and he's had a couple of questions. The first one, he was saying about the sea posies, and he says, what do you think about joining a whole load of sort of sea posies together and running them all around the allotment? The problem with that, Nigel, is basically water pressure. You need a reasonable amount of water pressure. What you find actually, because you know the sea posies that I've got they're in length of kind of 15 metres. What you do find is the end that's connected to the hose pipe lets out a lot more water than the end that isn't connected to anything, like, you know, the other sort of the blanked off end. And I think if you connect, well, more than one together, what you're going to get is at the end, or in the second hose, or even the third hose, you're just going to get less and less and less water pressure, so there's going to be less and less water let out. So what you'll find is the majority of the water is let out where the hose is connected to it, but the end, you know, like the other end that you've got almost no water will come out of it. And I think the longer you have the hose, the less likely you have that. Having said that, if you look on the internet, you can get lengths of hoses which are sort of 50 metres long. So I would imagine if you're using those, what you'd need to have is some kind of pump to increase the pressure. Now, water pressure, everything, same as everything, it's always better when you were a kid. I know for a fact when I bought the house that I'm living in now, 20 years ago, the water pressure was around 3 bar in pressure, which is reasonably good. And if you turn the tap on, you know, it literally would gush through. Now, because the the water infrastructure, if you like, in Britain, all of the pipes that are running through the streets and all the rest of it, do have leaks in them. What the water board decided to do around 7 or 8 years ago was lower the water pressure, basically to reduce the amount of water that they were losing. Now, the water pressure now in my house is something just under 2 bars, so it's lost a third of its pressure. And believe it or not, that sort of extra bar made a massive difference to hose pipes and stuff like that. I mean, if I had the hose pipe on, you could literally, you know, spray for, you know, a good sort of 10-15 yards in front of you with absolutely no problem at all. Now, you know, the pressure and the flow is considerably reduced because of them reducing the basically the flow through the pipe, well the pressure through the pipes, and therefore the flow. So what you will find is if you'd have probably put a few seep hoses together sort of 7 or 8 years ago, you'd have probably got away with it. Now the water pressure just isn't enough. So what you'd need to do is get some kind of water pump, or something like that, using a pressure shower or something like that. And what you'd need to do is increase the pressure. And the other thing that I would suggest as well, if I was going to do this, is I wouldn't connect the hoses in series, I'd connect them in parallel. So basically what you'd have is, again in Tesco's for 50p you can get the wide piece sort of hose coupling. And what I would do is, rather than connect one hose and then another hose on the end of that and another hose on the end of that, what I would do, if you imagine, is bring your hose up to your garden and then put a wide piece in, so you're splitting it into 2, and then have one seep hose on there, then have another length of hose to the next seep hose, and then you can potentially do that again and again. And then you'd need to increase the pressure with some kind of pump, either off a like a jet washer type pump, or you know, off a power shower or something like that. But you'd most certainly need to increase the pressure going into the system. I think the pressure that we've got now, you know, which is around 2 bars, really you can only really have one sort of 15-metre length seep hose. It only just about does that, to be honest with you. The next question that Nigel was asking, he says, what do you think about the hose lock connections, the one I've been talking about, you know, where you just push them together and they're away. They are good, they're really handy, to be honest with you, Nigel. I water my allotment two different ways. From either from the house, I run a hose pipe up the garden to the allotment. Also we've got a water supply on the actual allotment, which is not too far away from the bottom of the allotment. So what I normally tend to do is have 2 hoses going at the same time. One is powered from or supplied from the supply in the allotment, and the other one is supplied from my house. So what I tend to do is have 2 hose pipes going at the same time. The hose, the pressure that I get up the allotment is a little bit better than the pressure I get from the house. Not because of the length of sort of hose pipe. I think it's just the amount of joints and all the rest of it which are in the pipes basically in the house to before it gets to where I put the hose pipe on it basically. But I would most certainly say, with the coming back to your question about the hose lock connections and stuff like that, because they're quite narrow. Obviously, the wider the bore of the pipe, the better the flow of water. Obviously, because if you narrow the joint, I mean, if you imagine a hose pipe really is only kind of that wide, that's a little piece of hose pipe, and that's only sort of, I don't know, 12mm wide. And obviously the hose pipe from my house running up to the allotment is probably around probably about 200 foot long, and over that length most certainly I lose pressure, and where I've got the connection joints it narrows that even further. So that's probably why I lose the pressure as well during in the 200 foot of pipe that I get to come up to the allotment. But the hose that I have on the allotment supply always tends to the water's a lot higher pressure and or noticeably higher, and it runs the sprinkler and everything like that considerably better. The next question comes from Nick White, and he was saying, what damage do aphids actually cause? Now, it was Nick's question originally that we were talking about aphids and me spraying with garlic and stuff like that. And Nick's had aphids, basically black fly, over all sorts of things. And he was saying, what sort of damage do they actually cause? Aphids basically bore into the plant and suck the sap out of the plant. Now, most most plants will actually survive quite happily with aphids all over them. It will obviously weaken the plant. You know, you are much better off getting rid of the aphids, but aphids, unless you get an absolute you know, sort of mass colony all over the plant, you know, it's unlikely to kill the plant. They will eventually kill the plant, but if controlled, really the damage the aphids cause is you know, is reasonably minor, as long as you sort of keep on top of it. But aphids do breed very quickly, as I was explaining last week. And what you need to do is, as soon as you see any signs of aphids on any of your plants, get on top of it, spray with garlic, or just put your finger through, or spray with soap, or whatever you're going to do. And you know, just try and sort of kill them off as quickly as you can. If left, you know, 10 or 20 black flies very quickly turn into 200 or 300, and then they're in the thousands, and then they're covering everything. So you're much better off nibbling it in the bud as soon as you see it, because it's when they get into, you know, sort of mass numbers, you know, when you talk into the thousands, that's when they'll kill plants and stuff like that. But a few aphids won't cause that much damage to the plant, but what you need to do is get on top of it as quick as you can do, because when they multiply and there's thousands of them, they will cause damage to the plants, because they're basically sucking all of the sap out of the plant, and obviously the plant's only got so much sap, so, and the aphids will just keep on going and going until basically the plant dies. In essence, a few aphids won't cause too much problems, but if they, you know, if they get into the, you know, masses, then, you know, they will potentially weaken the plant to the point where it dies. The next one comes from Grumpy Poo, and she was saying about rhubarb leaves being an insect repellent. In all honesty, Grumpy Poo, I'm not quite sure where you got that information from. Rhubarb leaf contains various acids. There's, you know, there's sort of various acids in there. There's an oxalic acid, there's a dicarbolic acid in there, and these are all can be used as pesticides, not as a repellent, but to kill pests. And as I've explained before, what you can do is if you boil the leaves of rhubarb, what it will do is it will concentrate these poisons, if you like, these acids down, and basically you can use them as a spray to spray on you know, your plants to kill aphids and things like that. Now, the leaves on their own, you know, do contain these poisons, but the concentration's not, you know, not massive. Now, what you can get, in all honesty, is you can get black flies, which are aphids, on rhubarb. So, you know, you know, the poison in its concentration in the leaves isn't enough to kill black flies. What you need to do is condense it down into a much stronger concentration to spray on to kill them. So, you know, the fact that you can get black fly on rhubarb proves that it's not poisonous enough to kill you know, aphids straight off. So, but I have never once heard before rhubarb being used as a repellent for insects or aphids or whatever. So in all honesty, I don't believe that it is. Now, rhubarb doesn't give off much of a smell or anything like that. So I'm struggling to understand why it would be an insect repellent, but most certainly you can boil the leaves down to create basically a spray to get rid of insects. But you're much better off with aphids using things like garlic, soap and things like that, because they're harmless to humans. The next one comes from Brian Hubry, and he was talking about boiling the garlic rather than just, you know, sort of put it in a jam jar and sort of shaking it up. I've not done that before, but my understanding is that if you boiled it, you would potentially, because the garlic oil or the essence of the garlic would potentially boil off before the water. So I'm not quite sure. I think if you were to boil it, you'd want to basically bring it to the boil and then let it cool, rather than boiling off, because if you did that, I think you would potentially sort of lose the concentration of it. But I never bother boiling it. All I do is basically crush it into the water, shake it up a few times, as I've explained, strain it off or whatever, put it in the spray and then spray it on, and that works really well. I don't tend to bother boiling it, but thank you for the tip. The next one comes from Patrick Meacham, and he was talking about the mole down the bottom. In all honesty, Patrick, I don't know what to do about the mole. I don't really want to trap it, to be honest with you, because I think moles are nice little creatures, and I do think they get a hard time.
and in all honesty, the mole's not creating too much of a problem for me at the moment, and I'm hoping as the season goes on he buggers off, to be honest with you. But excuse my French, but he is causing a little bit of damage. One of the pumpkin plants is most certainly suffering because of it, but you know, I'm not heinously bothered about the pumpkin plant, to be honest with you. But I think there are a number of moles, and he is, or they are causing havoc at the bottom end at the moment. Now, what I'm going to do is leave it for a few weeks and hope that the mole goes elsewhere, to be honest with you. I don't really want to start putting trap stale poison down, to be honest with you. I don't think that's really what I want to do. But if it causes too much damage, I'm obviously going to take measures to either catch it or get rid of it or trap it or whatever. I don't know. I don't want to, but I may be forced to. But right now, with the level of disruption that they're causing, I've decided just to leave them be and hope that they'll go elsewhere in a few weeks' time. So that's basically the mole situation at the moment. Now I've had a message coming over from Neri Cullen. I hope I've pronounced your surname right. Now Neri's from the Caribbean, and she's having a whole host of problems watering things. And us in Britain, we think we've got it hard this year because the weather's gone a bit hot and cold. Now obviously in the Caribbean they do have all sorts of weather changes. They have lots of rain, and they can have massive downpours of rain and all the rest of it. And she said she's had problems with her garlic because she's kind of watered it, and then she's had this massive downpour of rain, and the water's got it. The amount of water, the garlic's become over watered, and she's kind of lost some of the garlic, which is a shame. So I wanted to put that comment in. I was pleased that Neri had actually sent it over, but it just kind of puts into perspective that here's us in Britain. We're always sort of moaning that the weather's always, it's never quite right. It's always too dry, too wet, too hot, too cold, all the rest of it. But really, we get it quite easy. When you think of people over in America, where they're in really dry areas, or you get areas, in other parts of the world that, like Japan, China, and also, the Caribbean and stuff like that, where they get loads of rain, and and they're really struggling. We're moaning that we've had a couple of inches of rain, and and they'll have 6 or 7 inches in half an hour, sort of thing. So, during the monsoon season, but. I've got quite a few friends over in Japan, and it's actually monsoon season in Japan at the moment, and they were saying that they're getting sort of 6 inches of water in half an hour, from the rain. It's absolutely incredible the amount of rain that they get in it. So really, we've got nothing to moan about, and I just wanted to put it into perspective. And I just want to say to Neri, thank you very much for your comment, and I hope you all the best with your garlic and stuff like that. And in Britain, we should think ourselves lucky that we don't get anywhere near the extremes of weather that you do. So thank you for that. The next one comes from Mark Davis, and he was saying, does your sprinkler have a motor in? Now, the sprinkler is completely powered by the water, so you put the water in, and basically inside the sprinkler there's a device that, as you put the water in, it basically spins it round, and that's what powers the arm going backwards and forwards. So it's quite a natty little device, to be honest with you. They are quite readily available on the market. This one that I've got at the moment was reasonably expensive. I paid about £25 for it, to be honest with you. I have had various ones of these. I bought a reasonably cheap one which cost me about £5. That lasted about 6 months and then just stopped working. And I've had another one which also packed in after not so long, after a year or something like that. And what I thought was, rather than going out and spending £5, £10, £15 on one, I thought I'd get a decent one, because these ones are they're a good make. And so basically what I did was I bought this about 4 years ago, and it's served me really well. What you do have to do is take it apart, which is easier said than done, but they don't look like they were meant to be taken apart, to be honest with you, but I have worked out how to do it, because inside there's a filter, and basically every year what I have to do in the spring is take the filter out and clean it up, because basically what happens is it stops moving, so you take the filter out, clean it, put it back in, and it all starts off again, and away you go. But it is a sealed unit, so if if they do go wrong, if they do go pear-shaped, then basically you can't fix them, you have to go and buy another one. But as I say, they are or they can be reasonably expensive. I've seen them in sort of the cheaper shops, like I would want to say that after I've had a few beers, like Aldi's and places like that, and Wilco's. I have seen them in there, and they do cheaper makes. I've never bought one from there, so I don't know how long they'd last. But the one thing, the one bit of advice that I can give you is at the end of the season, before it starts to get cold, take it all off the hose pipe and make sure it's all completely drained out. Give it a good shake, get all of the water out that you can, and then put it in your shed for overwinter. Don't leave it out, because if you leave it out, it gets water inside. When it freezes, that water expands and it'll break the internal parts, which is, I think, is the way I broke the first one I had. So most certainly, if you do go out and invest in one, then make sure that you get all of the water out and put it in your shed over the winter, or in your greenhouse, or wherever, somewhere where it's dry. So so if it does freeze, there's no water in there, it'll freeze and damage the inside of it. There are other alternatives. They're the ones that spin around that way. But what I find is the ones that spin around sort of that way, if you like, they'll only cover probably about like a 4 or 5 metre square, or circle if you like, of area. The reason I like these ones is they'll actually cover an 8 metre wide area by probably about 4 or 5 metres. So, and luckily my allotment plot is actually 8 metres wide, so if I stick it smack bang in the middle of the allotment, it'll actually water from path to path. It'll water the entire length of the allotment. So if I stick it in the middle, I can basically water like 4 metres worth of the allotment, and then move it down another 4 metres, and then do that. And what I can do is, if I move it up and down the allotment in the middle, I can water basically the whole allotment. So that's why I like these. And I think for vegetable patches and stuff like that, I think this type is particularly good. If you've got a smaller patch that you want to water, where it's only sort of, I don't know, 3 or 4 metres sort of size patch, the ones that sort of spin round and just throw water up in the air, they're perfectly good for what you need. So you don't need to go out, because I know the circular ones are a lot cheaper. You can probably pick them up for sort of £3, £4, £5 from sort of quite a few of the garden centres, or the what's name. But with anything like this, in all honesty, if you are going to invest, what I would suggest you do is either go online and buy a good make, or go to one of the sort of Aldi's, or the what's name, that when they do have the good quality ones in, and buy them from there. If you buy them from garden centres, they're typically overpriced, to be honest with you. Okay, so I thought I'd just quickly go and show you. It is actually made by Hoselock, and there's this sort of part here. That's the bit that actually makes it move backwards and forwards. And basically, what you need to do is sort of unscrew this part here, and then inside there's the filter. This part here, sort of you can move them backwards and forwards, which will basically limit how far you can have. I always have it on maximum spread, and then that'll go backwards and forwards and cover up like an 8 metre. It'll go 4 metres either side of this basically, and then sideways wise it's about 4 metres, as I've said, and that just basically goes backwards and forwards. There's no motor or anything inside here. Basically, it's all done by the water pressure. So you connect your hose pipe onto the end there, and then basically the water pressure in there will then drive this mechanism round inside, and then this basically just moves backwards and forwards to basically distribute the water. As I say, this make isn't the only make by far. There are quite a few different makes. This is Hoselock, and this is a particularly good one, to be honest with you. So I would recommend, if you are going to buy one, I would recommend that you get one of the better ones. Not only Hoselock, there are others out there that are pretty good, but the Gardener company that I was discussing last week on the last video, that make the timers, they also make one of these. I'm pretty sure I've seen a Gardener one, and they're a good quality. That's a German make, but they are a good bit of kit. As I say, I've had a couple of cheap ones in the past, and they haven't lasted. I'm not sure if that was my fault or if it was the actual product fault, to be honest with you, but they always failed in kind of the winter time. So what you need to do is, in the winter, just disconnect it from the bottom there, and then give it a good shake, get all this sort of drops of water out, and then just hang it up in your greenhouse or wherever, and just keep it dry. It'll serve you for years. As I say, I've had that about 4 years now, and I've had no problem. So there's another question. Excuse me. There was another question which came over YouTube. Now, I've had a few problems with YouTube recently, and I think people have been trying to put comments on the channel and not being able to, and I've also had comments that I've seen and read, and I've gone back to respond to them or wherever, and the comments vanished. Now, I had a few problems a few months ago from Ken Fuller said that he'd put a comment on it had vanished, and I hadn't removed it. So I do think we occasionally get a few glitches on YouTube, and some of the comments go. However, somebody was asking me what was the sprinkler that I use, and I'm sorry that comment's vanished for some reason. But basically, as I've just explained, it's made by Hose Lock, and that's the type, and they're around. You should be able to pick one of these up for around £15–20. If it's much more than that, it's overpriced. If you go on the internet, you'll most certainly find these on various sites, gardening sites and whatever else. Potentially eBay as well. You could look on, but most certainly garden sites will have these, and you should be paying about 15–20 quid for one of them. But and in all honesty, it's money well spent, because I use this. When this time of year, I use it all the while, and all I need to do is basically put it in the middle of the allotment, stick the hose on it, and typically it stays in one position, which is on the onions and on the brassicas. And then basically what I'll do is I'll water that, and then I'll take it from there, and then move it down, and then water the other brassicas and the the sort of smaller vegetables down the bottom. This isn't something that you'd use to water potatoes with. Obviously with potatoes what you need is seep hose or something like that, because you don't want to get the foliage wet. But they are a good bit of kit, and they are quite labour saving, because all I need to do is connect the hose up, turn it on, leave it for half an hour, and the watering's done. So, thank you for watching this episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. I hope you found it useful. If you do have any comments or questions or anything like that, please do put them down below, and I'll always get back to you. And I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's Allotment Garden.